Hey, welcome back to WILI 1495.3 FM, your local radio station with the greatest show on the air, Windham Weekly. I'm your host, Ken Folan, the voice of Windham. Joining me today, as always, unfortunately, is my best buddy, Mark Doyle from the Board of Ed, the heart of Windham. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. The co-host and heart of Windham.
Yeah, you're the co-host.
Always good to be here.
All right, that's enough from you tonight. Actually, what I'd like to see is Mark do the introductions of our very special guest today as we get closer to that May 12th date. What's that? Is that a secret?
These are two of our finest administrators who I'm going to allow to introduce themselves.
Oh, because you can't handle it?
No, I'm going to take a page from your book.
You can't remember names anymore either?
So we have the assistant superintendent with us, Neil Weathers, one of our favorite guests because he laughs at all his Ken's bad jokes. And then we have our finance director, Ray Dolphin.
Dolphin.
I'm sorry, I like the fish. It's my fault.
So Ray is here today to join Neil in getting us back to the steps on the Board of Ed budget, right? Ray is new to the show. He's getting adjusted, and I told him don't sit too close to Doyle or dumb things happen. But Ray will explain, and along with Neil, just where we are. I'm going to start the show off simply by saying, hey, this Tuesday, no matter how you feel, we have a budget to vote for on May 12th. All the voting booths will be open in each of the districts. The VFW, the Elks Club, and the Windham Firehouse for Districts 4 and 5. And again, Districts 1, 2, and 3 at the VFW districts. A mix of 3 and 4 is at the Elks Clubs, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So there's plenty of time all day to go in there, bring your ID, and vote. And once again, I will ask you, straightforward, vote yes on these budgets, especially this Board of Ed budget. It means so much to getting the school the energy and the fuel it needs to keep going in the trajectory of improvement, which that's all this district has done for the last few years, and we want to continue that momentum with your support. Ray, why don't you start off, as Mark was discussing, where we began with the superintendent's requested budget, how that was first developed. I know it was from the buildings up, and then where we got to and what we're asking the community to support.
I want to make sure that people understand that this was not a budget that came together overnight. This was a budget that the administration worked on for many months before it even got to the board level. So,
absolutely.
Go ahead, Ray.
As you alluded to, we've been working on this budget since the late fall. And then going into the winter. And as you said, it's a bottom-up budget. So when we use the phrase "the budget," it's actually a combination of other smaller budgets that are each individual budget for each school that exists within the Windham school system, along with things like pupil services, transportation, facilities, the nurses' budget, and other small budgets. And so what we do is the superintendent, convenes a meeting with myself, Neil, Chinyan, in the finance department. So the four of us, we met collectively to identify a process to move forward for analyzing current spending, and then a schedule for meeting with each individual party that's responsible for any one of those sub-budgets. At that point, we then individually meet with every single principal and every single department lead, and we analyze line by line every single item of spending that has occurred within the current year.
Now, this is after the principals have met with their staff and their parent councils, Neil, is that correct?
Yes, sometimes with the SGCs that can occur concurrently and after. Both things could
occur. But they're also planning from the bottom of the principals meeting with their teachers.
Yes.
And so it just continues to flow from the bottom up.
Absolutely. Mark is nailing it. While we from central office, but when we invite a principal in, when a principal comes in, they don't come just by themselves. They have already conducted several meetings with their teams, the people who oversees the math department, the reading department, and other school leaders within their building, so that they can have an informed budget to present to us. So like you said, it's multiple different layers, many different meetings that occur. And so the first step is that we actually we identify those costs, and we try to create a budget that we basically deem like a maintenance of effort as it would be. So what if we cut nothing? What if we just kept everything the same, but we account for increased costs, inflation, salary, et cetera. And so we look at that budget line by line. We come up with a number. That first number was 9%, was over 9% actually. Dr. Gamero, we knew that we
So
didn't
the
want to
first
present
budget
that. Sorry,
proposal
go ahead.
was 9%, you're saying,
It was
okay.
9.97%.
No, for the superintendent's budget before she got to the recommended budget, I believe was 9.505. We'll see if I.
Yep, I can give you the exact number. Sorry
Let's see,
about
we're
that.
flipping a coin, and if and Neil owes me the drink.
Sorry, guys. My first time on radio. So
No.
I'm nervous here.
You got a face for it, don't worry.
All right, 9.509%. Was there.
Wow, Neil.
4,000.
You know what it was? Misinformation from Doyle. He always told me 9.97. This is how much he's not paying attention, Ray, at your meetings. So, but anyway,
Wow.
so that's where she
Thank you,
started, and that's really important to understand. That was to maintain everything, and to fill the building needs, and that's truly important when you have children in the system. That if we weren't making progress, I'd have some questions. We're making progress.
Neil can speak more clearly about that.
Yeah. So just to that is true. Like if you look at the accountability index, which is essentially the report card for our districts, we have gone our performance indexes in reading, math, and science are increased over 3 years, and in many of the buildings 3 years in a row. But our overall 3-year increase, we increased in all of them last year, and we're doing better than all of them in the past 3 years. We consistently, in our accountability index, perform the highest in what we call our DIRG, a district reference group. So the 6 other districts have similar demographics to our school population, which is Hartford, New Haven, New Britain, Waterbury, Bridgeport, and New London. We have the highest accountability index of those, and we actually, in our budget, in Dr. Gamero's budget presentation, we showed that we outperform a lot of districts that actually are in DIRGs higher than us. So to your point, yes, we've been doing very well.
If anyone's been listening to this show for the past year, we have not just looked at numbers and data. We have talked to the people, right? The frontline people in the buildings, and Dr. Gamero was gracious, and because there were sometimes we had to get permission for this person to come, for that person to come, with or without parent. It's not easy, for the safety of the children and so on. They got to stay away from people like Mark Doyle. But I mean, ultimately, I left every day, every show, learning something positive, even more positive for the district. And I would hear the achievements and the pride in every building administrator that came through, and every classroom teacher that came through. And so I think when people start hearing misinformation, it clouds judgments. And there's some people who live on Facebook, and I am not one of them. But there are people who are actually living. That's their life. And they post whatever, a lot of keyboard cowboys out there who just put whatever numbers they think are true and comments. And so if this person's saying no, we must be voting no. There's a majority of people out there who are going to vote yes. And I believe this budget's going to go through. It's going to take effort. When I say take effort, I know that there's town committees in our community who are working very hard with phoning, door knocking, putting up signs all over the place, just reminding them to vote, and then you have the teachers, the WFT in town, who mailed out cards to every member of their union. All the teachers got their cards. I'm sure the custodians, everyone who's in the buildings, if they would just vote yes, the majority of those folks who are in that building, you guys got your budget, and we can put this aside and then focus on the next school year. And that's what the community needs to do. We got to stop the bickering and finger pointing and just come up with solutions. What else does the school district need, and how can we as a community support the school district? Going forward, because that's the difference between making a community grow or die. I don't know how you feel about that, Ray, but I think you would agree with me on that, and you better.
I would think one of the amazing things that Ken has learned over his time here was just last week when we had the Early Childhood Learning Center people on. to find out that we have 195.
192 students in that, for that particular,
And
for the 3 and
that's
up,
three-
it's
yeah,
3 to
three and
5.
up.
And then after that, before that, they have kids that are
Have
8
40,
weeks,
yeah.
and they got 40 kids in that age, 8 weeks to 2 years old or 3 years old. And they come in, like I said to the lady, I said, how early do you take them? She goes, 8 weeks after their first shots. They sold like puppies. But I mean, that's an amazing amount of kids that are going to get the head start in education. That's huge. Huge. And then we had one of the teachers, the director played a taping of this one 3-year-old this 3-year-old student who collaborated with his colleagues, if you will, and came up with a story and his emphasis in his speech and this and that. It was amazing because my grandson, that's probably why I said son, is 3 years old. He lives up in Kingston, New Hampshire, and he's involved in a very strong program up there as well. Mom is an educator as well, and you get it. This is the head, the leg up he's getting. I can imagine all these youngsters down here. I just never knew it was that big of a program. I really had no idea how it was that big.
And it's
amazing.
a phenomenal program. It's led by Principal Baumgardner and her staff, and they do a phenomenal job.
And Kathy Goodwin as well.
Kathy Goodwin, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the whole team over there has just been wonderful.
Yeah, it was a learning lesson for me that it was there, and I'm sure we could probably, if we had funding and more space, we could probably put another couple hundred kids in the program.
Well, I'll say because we follow all the Office of Early Childhood regulations, but the building currently houses, I believe it's about 240 students when you take all the programs you just described. So in essence, it's actually not our smallest school in the district when you think of it that way.
Yeah, it's amazing, and obviously a rolling enrollment too. Because as soon as I know, if I had an 8-week-old at this point in my life, that kid would be in school 8 weeks in a day and winning needles, whatever it took. But I mean, no, it's a remarkable thing. Again, and that's the bedrock of our school district. Now are these little guys. People always think of the elementary kids, the kinders, and so on, and then it's the middle school and the high school, and they're ready to shoot out to the real world. But nothing's going to happen unless we get the funding in place. So why don't we, so you were at 9.5, let's just say.
Yes.
And then the Board of Education and Dr. Gomero and the rest of her team brought it down to.
So after back and forth, we brought it back down to 3.97%.
And what did that do, Ray? Did that keep us on par with just last year, or did it improve? Because the 3.97, I think, is a maintenance budget. And then, like you said, inflation, contract negotiations, not filling all the open positions, I'm sure. But at 3.97, where is that? Where does that keep us?
So that still keeps us providing one of the priorities that Dr. Gomero. Before I get to that, we'll just identify one of the priorities Dr. Gomero, along with Neil, set was how do we cut any possible extra without impacting, having a negative impact on our students. So we took a lot of time, and I work with the finances, so this is primarily shouldered by Neil, Dr. Gomero, and that crew, to really analyze every single program that they provide, look into every single classroom. They visited schools, visited classrooms, spoke to the principals, spoke to teachers, and they tried to identify are there savings potentials there that we could still provide the same quality of service, but still cut some costs. Whether we can collapse some classes that may be underattended or some other things like that Neil can attest to. He can go into further detail about that. But that was a part of the activities that were involved. And so we cut some positions. We merged some classes, as I alluded to. We found other programming that offered the same, set of services, but maybe at a cheaper rate. We tried to renegotiate. We found some savings in everything, even when we were looking at how we manage the pension that we just did recently, how we do the amortization table. And so we looked at every single line item to identify any potential savings without cutting any services to our students. And so we were able to do that successfully.
And part of that was the good news, bad news. I think maybe Neil can shed more light on it, but as you recall, Ken, the middle school came out of needs improvement, but with that, we lost a $2 million grant.
There's a school improvement grant that is about $200,000.
$200,000.
220 something, I think.
So even though we brought the budget down to 3.97, that we had that hole to fill because we've lost $200,000. So that's the good news is that the middle school worked hard and brought themselves off that list. But the bad news is that we lost that $200,000 worth of funding.
Well, I'd rather lose the funding and have the academic.
Oh, absolutely.
improvement more than anything else.
It
But
just
it's
shows
a
another
matter
need.
of maintaining that improvement.
Right.
No, that's why this budget must pass.
Yes.
And by the way, the number to call in is 860-456-1400, 456-1400. This is a live show. So if you're teetering back and forth on what you're hearing on Facebook and what reality of life is and supporting a budget, not supporting a budget, call in. You've got two experts in the house. I know three with me, for God's sake.
I
We
know.
don't count Doyle.
I was counting you and I.
No, just please, Mark. Will you? I'm sending out a plea. Call in because these guys are here to answer questions. The one thing you can't say about this district is they've locked the doors and hid the key for you not to come in. They have an open door policy. They want to hear from you. They know you're paying their salary. They know they're paying for the heat in the buildings. They get it. And they've made themselves available at the drop of a hat. And every time we turn around to put them on the radio, simply because we want you to get to know who these guys are, right? Or these gals are. We want you to know the team that's taking care of your children or monitoring the spending in your buildings, right? These are your buildings. These guys, it's not a 9-to-5 job, but they work a 9-to-5 here running a school district that you're paying for. If you have concerns, 456-1400. In the meantime, again, May 12th is the day, this Tuesday. So have mom have her big day, cake and eat it. I tried to get her a free set of earrings. So I was at a food show last week, and there was some soy sauce earrings on the table.
Wow.
I was trying to cut the budget at the house, Neil.
Yeah. But then he ate them on the way home.
So if I could just add to what Mr. Dolphin was saying just a couple minutes ago, the 3.97, one of the things that we talked about is there were reductions to get there. And one of the ways we went about it is, and this is true of any year, some of the position reductions, and in this current budget, there is no layoffs. There's no one that would lose a job in the 3.97 projected budget. However, we did reduce certain things due to enrollment. So if we saw high school enrollment in a certain department was low, we knew, and someone left or resigned or retired, we knew we could reduce by one position. And we could reduce by one position, and then that would allow us to have some savings. So as a total, though, we were able to do 9.5 net reductions, but that involved us actually reducing by a total of, I think it was 26.5 positions we actually reduced. But then simultaneously, if you have a grade cohort with increased students, you have to increase a class. And next year's budget is a new RISE classroom with all the staff you need to run a RISE classroom. RISE is our autism program that we run in the district. So we reduced by 26.5, but I think we added 18 positions. So somewhere I'm close in the numbers, but it came out to be a net of 9.5.
Right.
Reduction.
Hello, caller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, this is Katina Cabano Owen. I'm so glad that you guys are on air. I have put a vote yes on Facebook, but I'm getting a lot of negative comments regarding not only the school, but also the money that has been now assigned to come to Windham by the legislation. So if you guys can explain how that money is going to be in addition, not part of, because of the minimum budget that we have to have for our students, that would be appreciated so people can learn about that.
Okay, we'll address that now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So as I'll let Mr. Dolphin jump in too, but like what I would say is basically that is a supplemental revenue, which is sort of independent from our budget ask. So we are still asking, as an administration, we are still going on our 3.97 increase because the supplemental fund, we don't know if it's 1 year or beyond. And we know that we need to continue operating our district. As you saw, that 3.97 wasn't even our maintenance budget. That was after we made a couple $1 million in reductions to get there. So we are advocating as an administration that is the budget we put forward. And currently, it is the budget that the Board of Education has recommended, sent to the Board of Finance, and then was sent to referendum. So we will see what the voters do, because I cannot advocate what they should do, but we will see if that passes on May 12th.
So the bottom line in that question, I will once again, I had a conversation earlier that the MBR is not impacted for next year. So that, again, this is a one-time grant, if you will, currently that we know about. We don't know if it'll be there next year or not, but we're still living in the reality of our budget of 3.97 that we need to pass, that we ask you to pass, that I do anyway. And so the monies, the additional funding comes as a one-time spend for the Board of Education, as it does come for the town. They're getting 1.8, I believe. And if that's the situation, it does not impact the MBR. So we're not trying to. So in other words, if all of a sudden we got to start with an increase of $4 million next year, that's a falsehood. And that's something that needs to be out there, even for some elected politicians who haven't delved into that enough and spread the word to their constituency. Instead of scaring people from voting, yes, it's an important vote.
I can say, Ken, you're right, and
of course I'm right.
We can't.
God, Mark.
A contingency of one. Okay, I can say that it's one of the things we're looking at or waiting for is more clarification. Everybody's trying to get more clarification on this extra money. I know I've been told tomorrow, Friday at 11, the Secretary of Education will be meeting with all of the superintendents to review and go over the details, because the lack of details out there is got everybody confused, not just us, it's all across the state. So we're still waiting for more details of that, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the budget we have is the budget that needs to be approved. The 1.8 or the 3 million, we can apply that money as needed when we get it, but we have to move forward with what we have, and then we'll know what we get later. I think we have another caller.
We do have another caller. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, this is Curtis Saylor from North Windham. How you doing?
Swell. What's up, Curtis?
Well, I just wanted to say what a great finance director you have in Ray Dolphin. It's been such a pleasure working with him and working through the way he's formatting his budgets now for the schools, the way he's really laying it all out there transparently. I mean, you've got some great professionals there in central office, and it's just going to be a pleasure working with him. I'm so happy he's with our town.
Thank you, Curtis. Now you're on the Board of Finance now, right?
At the moment, yep. They had me fill in for the remainder of the term.
Good.
Now, what's always interested me is when the general government side talks about their budgets. They like to talk about their increases in terms of the mill rate increase, the impact on voters, impact on taxpayers rather. When you talk about an increase, you're talking about an expenditure increase, that 3.97%.
Correct.
You know, when it comes to marketing, it's all in how you present it, because we had a 2% grand list increase this year. So that 3.97% expenditure increase, that translates to about a 2.9% mill rate increase. The impact on your proportion of the taxes. So the marketing is everything. The town certainly doesn't use a total expenditure increase. Definitely not this year. They go off of their mill rate increase.
Yeah, I noticed that it's kind of confusing because they don't know exactly what the mill rate is going to be, but you're right. We try and stick with the real numbers, but it was more difficult trying to get to the real numbers from the town side. But,
so I really appreciate this transparency and this new process. It was just such a pleasure going through the budget book. Ray's doing a great job, and you better keep him around forever, because I plan on sticking around. I'd like to keep working with this guy. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I really appreciate the compliment. But I do want to definitely, on public, give a big thank you to Chen Yen, because this is my first year in this particular role. I'm really proud of the development of our team, but she is the sort of behind-the-scenes, shouldering a lot of this work person. So Chen Yen, who works in our department as well, has been doing a fantastic job, and we really couldn't have done this without her.
Well, thank you, Ray. Thank you, Curtis, for calling in. So anybody who wants to call in, it's 456-1400. I do not respond to text messages, Jay Hanfield, during the show. So please call in if you have some questions. Don't be shy. We know you're not. Anyway, so we're going to continue on. So we got the 3.97. We need to move this forward. This other monies, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on it because it's still being sorted out. But basically, it's as of today, it doesn't impact the MBR, which the community needs to know. We're not starting in a hole next year. It would be a normal budget cycle, developing your cost expenditures, labor contracts, insurance, inflation, etc. But one-time spend, and we're not going to get into what that one-time spend can be, could be, or should be. And I'm sure on the town side with their money, it'll be handled in the same manner. We've got to watch what we're doing with our dollars. The biggest thing that we can do as a community is to grow the grand list. We're not going to cut ourselves out of this situation that we find ourselves in annually. So, go ahead, Ray.
Just wanted to take an opportunity because the first caller, was that Miss Katina?
Yes, it was.
Miss Katina.
Dr.
came in.
Katina, yes.
Dr. Katina, yes. One of our fantastic board members. When she made a reference about that minimum cost to fund the schools, I just wanted to just take a moment to emphasize there's a minimum. If any resident has an idea of whatever the cost is, whether we can all disagree what the cost is, we can put forth our expenditure list, the invoices, costs, etc. But whenever folks agree to whatever a cost is, every single year we know due to inflation that cost will increase. And so folks have to really understand that it's impossible unless we start to think about layoffs, cutting services or something of that nature to maintain the same dollar amount. So that's something that we just know is just built into the cost. And so if those funds from the state, that if they do come, as Mark alluded to, I'm really reluctant to go into detail about it because
Correct.
there's so much misinformation out there about it, and so we're kind of sifting through as well. But even if those funds were to come our way, if the budget doesn't pass, and I'm not saying yay or nay, it's not our position to be politicians, we're not going to say it, I'm just going to tell you the impact. What happens is that the following year, the minimum requirement that will be budgeted for the school to work with is going to be the 52 and some change million, not the 54. So we as a school district are really concerned about facing that if we don't have other further monies coming from the state, or we will unfortunately be forced to be in a position, if we're going to maintain every single service that we're providing to our students, to have a bigger percentage ask in order to maintain those costs. Because whether or not whatever we do, cost is going to increase this year, and cost is going to increase the year after that.
And that's transparency and honesty. It goes to one of Jay's questions about what about next year? Well, we got to get through this hump. They are already concerned about next year, as you just heard from Ray. I mean, this is important. Taxes go up, unfortunately, just about every year. Not every year, but just about. We've lived through the periods of zero pay raises, asking teachers for pay freezes. I did it back in the day, we did a series of golden handshakes to cut some expenses, which I think Ray and I should talk about after the show, since Mr. Doyle won't bring it up.
That's correct.
I think it's important that we look at the future as soon as this one passes at this point to know where we land. Because if it goes to zero, as Ray said, now they're going to need more. If we get this thing passed at this level at 3.97, it's probably going to be another progression of 2-3%. I would predict over the next cycle.
And we lived with the zero just 2 years ago, so it's already having its impact on us. An additional zero.
Right. And one of his other concerns is the amount of children with the general population going down, in a sense of children at the school. Whether it goes down or not, the cost of education rises. Materials have risen. The cost of transportation I don't know if they did a supplemental bill to you. I would imagine they did with the buses this year alone. I can't imagine.
So we did not get supplemental funding for transportation.
Right.
But one thing I can say, talking with the population, because I do hear this a lot, it is true compared to 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, Windham's school population is smaller and it's slowly decreasing. But just to keep in mind, like, for example, on average over the past 5 years, it's going down about somewhere between 40 to 60 students. But when you spread that, like you were mentioning the Early Childhood Center, we actually have 15 grades. So when you spread 60 students over 15 grades, that's 3 or 4 students across multiple buildings. So it doesn't have the actualized opportunity for savings that people think when it's distributed across multiple
Absolutely.
buildings, multiple schools. So that's important to understand. And also, too, I'm very curious next year because we were actually talking about the early childhood on our October 1st count that we report in our budget book, because October 1st is the official number. The enrollment was at 190, and due to their procedures of how they enroll students, that is now up to 240. So I think next year, some of the 100 student reduction we had this year, you'll kind of maybe see a flat. We'll see what happens, obviously, but some of that will be minimized because I think you're going to see a higher population in our early childhood on the October 1st count. So again, even in a couple years ago, we had an increase. So it's not always just a stable decline, although I would say the trend is a mild decline of somewhere.
We also should remember, amongst much angst, 2 years ago we closed Windham Center School. The Board of Ed has looked at this reduction, and that's one of the reasons we decided to close the Windham Center School. And we've also talked about combining our grade schools. That didn't go on, and we've put a pause on that. But the board has been taking action on this school population.
Besides the general population, it doesn't take 1 or 2 students to come in from out of state, a different town, that has special ed needs that go beyond the scope that we can provide in district. And once that happens, and that child deserves an education, just like the valedictorian deserves an education, and that child could run an additional $500,000 a year for services outside of a district. And so, the idea of the whole population, the numbers going down, like I said. So let's say you lose 100 kids in a year, grade kindergarten level. You take 1 student, and there goes that number shot to hell as we speak.
Well, actually, in you saying that made me think of this. In the recent year, there was the kindergarten legislation. So our kindergarten that's currently in grade 1 is 60 students less. As that cohort moves through and the law is passed, that will recoup itself over time. So that was also like kind of, it sounds like a contradictory phrase, but like an inflated deflation or enrollment decrease.
Yeah, you're talking about the state law that changed the age of
Right.
entering it.
Yeah.
It put a whole bunch of our students on the bump there.
Right. So most of our grade levels are somewhere in the area of like 230, 240 students for the entire grade level in the elementary grades. If you look at the current grade 1, it's about 60 students fewer, which makes sense if you back up the legislation age by 3 months, you reduce by 1/4. So
Yeah, well, again, the district is moving forward. Do you really want to stop it now? That's the question. Do you want to stop the progress of the community, over a tax increase at this point? And again, we all shoulder the burden of a tax increase, and that's why I'm going to keep on harping on it. It's the grand list we need to grow. It's not easy to grow a grand list in this economy, but there are ideas and thoughts that are out there that need to be acted upon and focused upon by town leaders, and that'll just help lessen the individual burden. But you can't give up because your kids have grown and they moved out of the district and they're adults. You can't neglect these young guys who are coming right behind them. And you want to be proud of your town. You want to be proud of your district. You've got to support the budget on May 12th. Mark?
Yeah, actually, what I was thinking is of it. I don't know, Neil, if you can remember the numbers, but one of the things that people forget. I keep hearing, well, can they read and write when they graduate from the high school? There's an old myth out there about that. But as I recall, we have a significant number of AP classes. We're leading the state.
Yeah, we actually have participation. One of the indicators is dual enrollment. College and career ready is the term they use. But students participating, and there's a variety of methods to earn this, but participating in AP, UConn, ECE, dual enrollment, college credit-bearing classes, and actually in Windham High School, the percent of students participating is actually higher than the state average.
Right. And these kids are actually getting college credits so that they can help them reduce the cost of their college education by as much as I think some of them are getting a semester or even 2 semesters worth of credits.
Yeah, we have had anecdotal stories of students come back to us and saying they graduated 1 semester early or a year early, and that had to do with the number of courses they were able to take and earn college credit when they were here at Windham. So that is a true, and for the student and the parents helping, that's a tremendous cost savings.
Oh, absolutely. Those programs have been around. My children have benefited from them all these years. A lot of neighbors, their children have benefited from that program. I've known kids who, back in the day when we had the students from Columbia, they actually had it was a full year of credits at UConn already put in the bank. So you can't beat that. And it's done at other schools. It's not like, oh, Wyndham's how fortunate. But we've had that kind of success with our children, just like we had at the end of the spectrum, the kids that just need that extra help right along. And that's what we're asking for the community, that extra help right along. Right, so this is going to be a real quick one, I think, because every year, whenever we get to this tight of the budget, we're not going to get a 3.97, we're going to cut middle school sports. You're going to cut something. If it isn't sports, it's leather class. If we still have that, I don't think we do. But I'm just saying in general.
We can tan your hide very easily, Ken. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, please. The jewelry and leather was always my best subject. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that's a serious thing because we had to do it. I was the chair of the Board of Ed. I had to go home and tell my 7th grade son at the end of the school year, who was going to be an 8th grader at the junior high, and tell him, hey, you're not going to be the captain of the team next year. You're not going to. There will be no team at the middle school. It's hurtful. It's hurtful to tell a teacher who's passionate about a district, hey, you're not going to get a raise like your friends who are working in the corporate world because of this budget. And they don't quit. They stick around and they go forward. Besides the middle school sports, okay, so we don't rile up people, all right. What are some of the other main potential cuts if we end up having to do this?
So before I get into specifics,
Yeah.
let me just give you a macro answer first.
Sure.
And this is very important. Dr. Gamero was adamant, and so this isn't me or Neil, this is Dr. Gamero, the superintendent, great leader. She was adamant that whatever cuts that we do end up being forced to make, it needs to be equal parts student activities and personnel, because we don't want to be in a situation to where we as the adults, we take no hit, whether it's salary freeze, layoffs, and our students have to lose field trips, sports, and all of their activities that go together, and making a full educational experience. We've all experienced that when we were youth, and so we want to do that for our kids. And so we're knock on wood, we have some things. I'm not going to speak on them publicly more than we've already had because we're hoping that doesn't happen.
Correct.
But just know that the total package is not just that. Whether we have additional tutoring services, we're going to definitely do everything that we can to do that. But who can we, if we have the potential to hire somebody to do something extra, that won't happen. But yes, field trips, sports, these sorts of things that don't impact the core, those things are vulnerable for sure. But the potential to expand services and to provide a better experience for our students, it's going to be extremely hampered.
And I can assure you that the board doesn't look at this of how can we threaten the citizens in order to get them to pass the budget. But if we look at anything we're going to cut, it's done from a very considered position of how can we best do it. But it could affect programs like the great increases we've made in our attendance. If we're forced to cut budget, we may not be able to continue the same, because that takes personnel, that takes presence of people going to the houses, calling to the parents, meeting with the kids. These all, people ask me about cutting middle school sports. I said, well, we could cut middle school math. It's a matter of, at some point, we're telling you this is what we need, and if we have to go below it, we're going to have to cut something. And it's not an attempt to blackmail or to threaten any citizens. It's the reality of what we're looking at.
Right. I just want to make sure, too, that community understands that we know the importance of athletics as a tool in the belt for teachers to, have this connection with the students in another way outside the classroom. It keeps them in, especially at the high school when you have minimum grade requirements, and that as a parent, I know that. I don't know if you folks all have. I know. Neil has children, But we all know the importance of whether it's drama, music, and no one wants to cut the arts. Athletics, no one wants to do that. And again, to Mark's point, it's not a threat. I mean, I actually had to do that in my day. And that's with a good relationship with the teachers union, which I think we've always had in this district. Back in the day it was Bill Skoog, and we would sit night after night and we worked out agreements where, we're freezing salaries, freezing steps, we're doing this and that. It got us over that 3-year hurdle when the economy was in worse shape than it is today. And that's called working together, right? And you took care of these people later on. You brought back what you could bring back when you did. But the bottom line, it is a student athlete. It's a student first. We got to pay for the academics. We got to get the rigor in there. We got to get these kids ready for the real world. There's other programs out there, but that's a lot of talk about nothing if we get this budget passed. And that's the bottom line with Ray being here today, the Director of Finance, and Neil Weathers, the Assistant Superintendent of School, is to implore you to get out there and vote on May 12th. We're imploring you to vote yes. This has to happen. We don't want to see cuts. In our world, we'd like to see a little bit more go in, but back in the day, again, I always compared it to like a circus in a sense. What do you want? What can you afford? That balancing on the tightrope, it's tough. The Board of Finance, I did that job as well. Couldn't stand it because it was too much. I knew what I wanted for the school district. And now I'm on the council, you always have a friend there. You got Randall Prose on there from a teacher at the high school is on that council as well. And I'll always keep that in the back of my mind for every decision. We've got to move this district forward so investors come. We've got a few things going on now to help the grand list. We have some properties that the town owned. My goal is to move these properties that are like the Windham Center School, like the Kramer Building, like the Oak Street Building, move them off the dead inventory list. I don't care if we get $1 a piece for them, vet the person, get these buildings sold to a private entity that's a taxable program. It has to be a for-profit program put in a deed that way. And that's our small way of growing the grand list, but it's better than having buildings fall apart and they're going to end up being burned to the ground or something will happen to these things eventually, and now you have zero to deal with. So again, May 12th, vote yes on the school budget and the town budget. Let's get over this so we can get on with the rest of the business of this community so we can progress. Mark?
Yeah, and one of the other final things that, not to do with the school board budget per se, but as a school board member and I've been looking for and advocating that we have some type of tri-board or meeting of the 3 boards together with our finance directors so that we can actually look at, because the town is not broke. We have several $1 million in, I know some of it's tied up and some of it has to be held there for interest rates and bond rates, but there is quite a bit of money, if you will. But we need to have a unified approach as to how it's been used, and
you got to be aligned in goals,
right,
just like the school district has to be aligned in goals.
check out our investments. And,
Dr. Gomero said attendance is a priority. Believe me, she made that point. There's an alignment through from the top to the bottom, and it's succeeded, right?
Yeah, very much.
And so that's
Neil's in school every day.
yeah, he's
That is true.
Twice on Friday, I heard. But anyway, that's what it's all about. Is being, if you're aligned on a goal and you're rowing the boat in the same direction, you're in pretty good shape. I agree with Mark. It's one of the things that in a couple of weeks I'll bring forward. I think a tri-board should at least. When I used to, the old-fashioned tri-board that I was on was a delegate from this board, that board, and this board. I think it's important that the full boards meet at least quarterly, so it's not just budget time, and we're not adversarial and pointing fingers and mistrusting each other, or the people that we work with, all that Board of Ed team and that school. It's always, you guys are always the people,
The butt
of it all. So it's sad.
Yeah, I appreciate you making all those points, and you too, Mark. I just want to say before we go, thank you for having both of us on. We appreciate the opportunity to always talk and advocate about the great things happening in our schools. One thing I want to say, I know Mark said 2 years ago, but actually right now we're living a 0% increased budget. So that 3.97 is coming after a 0, and that's important.
Right.
And then I think that's super important for everybody to know. And the burden of the taxpayers cannot be understated, like how tough that is, and to have an increase in taxes. But just operationally, the same things affecting the taxpayers, like utilities, affect our operations too. Like, so when your light bills are going up, so are ours. So we're trying to measure some of the things that Mr. Dolphin talked about.
So the bottom line, because we're only going to minute here, is if the school board got 0 last year and they're asking for 3.97 to just keep us going, right? Think of your home without a pay increase. Maybe there's 2 pay checks coming in a week. Would you have survived this year without getting at least a 2, 3, 4, 5% increase last year in your paycheck? I doubt it, because it's a struggle if that's all you received for an increase. I want to say thank you on behalf of Mark and myself to Ray Dolphin, who is now a christened member of the Windham Weekly Show. We'll have him on more often. And of course, our friend Neil Weathers, our assistant superintendent, and we're doing so to say thank you, not just for everything you do for the school district every day, but for taking the time away from your personal lives after hours and joining us on our show. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.